Oh no, Lululemon crashed minus 18% after their Q2 2025 earnings. So we've seen in our latest video about Lululemon that growth was going to be difficult, and we were proven right. In the latest earnings Q2 2025, Lululemon actually showed us that growth was actually very difficult in their biggest market, which is North America. So I'm Eddie Farman, and in this video we are going to deep dive into their latest Q2 2025 earnings and see if at this price of $168 per share they are actually buy today. So let's get started. Okay, so first let's review what happened in this Q2 2025 earnings for Lululemon. So actually the big figures in these earnings are that total revenue actually grew by 7%, which is actually quite good, especially on the back of international expansion. We've seen that diluted EPS actually was negative in terms of growth, minus 2%, establishing itself at $3.1 per share. And what we can see as well in terms of revenue is that the total comparable sales were actually growing only plus 1%, which shows that there has been some expansion in terms of stores for Lululemon. As we've seen in our previous video, so Lululemon has actually its strategic endeavor called the power of 3x2. And they are actually focusing on growing their direct-to-consumer business, especially e-commerce, growing their men's basically business and their international expansion, especially in China. But let's deep dive into basically their main segments today. So we have seen that women's apparel revenue grew by plus 5%, men's by plus 6%, and accessories plus 15%, which is actually pretty good. And in terms of what they call guest experience, so as we've seen in our previous video as well, is that the business model for Lululemon is actually direct to consumer, so meaning that they are selling either online or offline through their own channels. And we are seeing store revenue grew by plus 3% and digital revenue, which is actually pretty good at plus 9%. And in terms of market expansion, and I think that's why actually the stock sold off. So we are seeing that the net revenue in Americas grew by only plus 1%, actually like minus 3% on a comparable basis. And international revenue actually was great. So we are seeing that Lululemon is expanding outside of the US with a growth of plus 22%, and especially in China. So actually these are kind of mixed results because we are seeing still growth in terms of revenue, but maybe not as strong as what the market was actually expecting. And the market is actually seeing or actually inferring that there are still a lot of competition, especially in the US for Lululemon, and that is actually hampering the growth of Lululemon in the US. And the market really doesn't like that, and I think that's why the stock actually sell down that much, minus 18% just after this earnings. So what's the story actually behind these numbers and these earnings? So we are seeing actually two things. We are actually first a problem in terms of growth, especially in the US. That has been actually addressed by the CEO of the company, saying that they are not very happy with the results. But the fact is that I think that they have a lot of competition in the US and the brand needs to reinvent itself. We also seen some margin erosion, so we've seen that the gross margin actually decreased, and this actually comes alongside the difficulty in terms of growth, because they need to actually discount a lot of products, and what was actually before kind of a luxury kind of item for Lululemon is kind of becoming a little bit more casual in a sense. So I think that Lululemon has to reinvent itself here, given that the result and what they are showing to the market. We have seen also a lot of different commercials where they have kind of veered away from their core consumers, their core guests as they actually called it. And I think that they need to refocus a little bit, and they need to come back to their core roots of what they are, meaning like more athleisure rather than trying to actually go into too many directions. Also, they need to refocus on actually their core innovation. The fact that Lululemon was actually considered a very good product, I think that they tried to actually cheap a little bit about their products. They tried to lower the quality by keeping the same prices, so try to expand their margin here, but I think they forgot a little bit that product innovation was actually key to their success before, and I think that they need to refocus on that as well. In order to turn around, they really need to focus on these things, and they really need to go back to growth in the US. They need to continue to expand in China, obviously, and I think that the stock could rebound from there. But at the moment, I think that after this Q2 2025 earnings, what we should expect from the management is to come back with a strategic plan for turnaround, because definitely the plan that they have today, especially in the US, is not really working, and the market is kind of disappointed with the result of Lululemon. Okay, so very quickly, so let's review the valuation of Lululemon after this big drop and the stock establishing itself at $167 per share. So today the valuation of Lululemon is actually $20 billion in terms of market cap, actually a huge drop from what it was a few years ago. We are seeing that now actually like the ratios or the metrics have actually become quite attractive, because we are seeing a P ratio of around 11, a price to operating cash flow of around 10, and a price to free cash flow around 17. So actually Lululemon is actually becoming pretty cheap here at this level, but this reflects like the difficulty that they have in terms of growth, and this reflects a company growing by only a single digits today. So I think that it's kind of deserved in a way this type of cheapness, but if they can actually pull up a good turnaround, I think that today Lululemon is definitely cheap. But these investors have to basically try to find out if these low multiples are deserved or not. And I think that this is the real job of an investor here today. So on my side, I still think that this is quite cheap, and there is a huge space to actually bring a turnaround at this valuation. So I think that if the management can pull a new strategy to reinvigorate the sales, especially in North America, to come back to the core roots of what made them successful before, I think that today Lululemon is pretty cheap, especially at 10 times price to operating cash flow today. I think that there's a lot of growth coming in if they can pull it off. We will also see some valuation expansion. So definitely what we have to be careful here and what we need to pay attention is how they can turn around, because I think that they are cheap, but they are cheap for a reason. So I think that here everyone should actually have some caution on the name, because it's actually crashed. So after earnings, obviously today establishing itself as $167 or $168 per share. And so I think that it's not going to turn around so very quickly. I think that it will take months or even years to actually turn this ship around, but definitely if they can pull it off, the stock today is very cheap. Okay, so what's my takeaway after these earnings and after this big crash from the stock? So I think that on my side that Lululemon is becoming very interesting, and every value investor and every investor should actually deep dive into the stock and pay very close attention to what the management is going to do going forward, because I think that Lululemon has a lot of potential to rebound. They have a huge expansion, so in China and internationally. I think the brand is actually very strong still, and they can definitely like pull it off if they can come back with a very strong marketing campaign, refocusing on the core values, especially in terms of athleisure, and actually bring back or like win back the, I would say, the heart of especially like young women. And definitely like Lululemon should actually play on its strengths instead of trying to become a little bit too woke in a sense. And I think a lot of people have seen that, and we have seen with American Eagle. So they can definitely actually turn around the thing by just refocusing on what they are very good at. I think that they have a very great concept. The CEO also underlined that, the fact that they have very great margin, they have great products, and I think that if they continue a little bit like Nike, so if they can refocus their energy into what they can do well, I think this could be a great turnaround story. Having said that, so the stock I think today, as I mentioned, is cheap, but cheap for a reason, so people should be careful here. Another very important point is that we are seeing in terms of buyback. So they, in the last 12 months, so they have been buying back their stock quite heavily. So they reduced the share outstanding by around 4%. Today, the buyback yield is around 7%. So I think that this is going to support the stock going forward. And what we can see in the next few years is that we are going to get some return as well from the buyback. And especially if they continue to increase this buyback, is going to be very interesting. So we have to actually keep our ears to the ground on these stocks, because I think that at these prices, it becomes very enticing. There are other opportunities much more evident, I think, or much more obvious in the market. So I think that Lululemon is a good opportunity today that people should look at, but definitely it's not, I think, the most obvious play today in the market. I think we have much better play that we have already discussed on this channel. So I think that today I'm just observing what's going on with Lululemon, what's the plan for the turnaround, and if the plan makes sense and if we are seeing more potential going forward in terms of growth. I think that Lululemon is definitely going to be a very strong buy today. It's not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence on the stock. Just like me, follow the stock going forward. And if you're interested in the analysis like this one, please check my other videos. Please subscribe, and I see you in another one. Bye.